Ladies and gentlemen, tank review time! Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. So today, this is the first tank review of this patch, and it is on the Israeli Merkava Mk.1, and it is to be found as a reward vehicle for the ongoing Battlefield Engineer event in the American tech tree as a rank 6 reward tank, so it doesn't have premium status. In today's tank review, I want to show you all the features of the tank, then talk about its survivability, which is one of the main selling factors and one of the things that have to be clarified. I also want to compare it to some of the other tanks that it will mostly face on the battlefield, and meanwhile, while I do the rundown on the statistics, etc., in the background we will see obviously some gameplay. So without further ado, let's begin with the armor, and the outer hull is obviously not that impressive while being angled. We can see that it is mostly cast homogeneous armor, 60mm, here 90mm, and there 50mm, but that's just the first layer of armor because this tank has a lot of interesting interior designs. So that is the part number one. Part two is that we have on the side of the hull here some side skirts, and if we then remove them, we can see that there is a 50mm plate. Now, at the battle rating where this tank sits, which is 8.7, a lot of ATGMs, a lot of heat FS, and especially high penetrating armor piercing rounds, in particular AP/FSTs, have no problem whatsoever either semi-overmatching it, or interacting with the armor, or just simply penetrating it because they don't bounce like AP/FSTs. And so there you can see that you have to not angle this tank. You must not angle this tank. And if you do, then a lot of the features that the tank possesses in order to survive an incoming fire get lost. So that is the hull. So the side is in true main battle tank fashion, not the strongest. The rear also only 30mm. Then let's talk about the turret, and the side here is 65mm as well as the rear. Now this here creates a shot trap, so but I mean, you know, it depends on the ammunition type, because again, one of the survivability aspects of the tank that you might shoot here with hash or heat. And then we come to the front, and the front is very interesting as it is a very big shot trap here. Then we have some spaced armor, and so there are some interior layers as well. And yeah, the two main factors are that you still can easily hit here this gun breach, and it is top tier all over again. And this is one of the experiences that I have. If an enemy is surprised by my appearance, he automatically, as a last resort or as a muscle memory shot, takes out my gun breach. Another factor is that either with APAG, for example, some of the Russian MBTs that still have it, can either try to shot trap this or go here for this part here, and then you can pen through this and splash the interior of the turret. Now finally, let's come to the X-ray, and we can see that we have 4 crew members and a rather interesting design, because in the front there is a fuel tank, then comes an armor plating, then comes the engine or the power pack, then there is another plate in front of the fighting compartment protecting the driver and the rest of the interior. So there is a lot of spaced armor going on, and indeed this can catch a lot of powerful shells. Heat and hash get easily absorbed, as well as APAG. Obviously then the fuel tank begins to burn, and you simply don't have more than 2 fire extinguishers, which is kind of sad for this tank. Another aspect is, since the power pack is mounted in the front, this increases the survivability, yes, but also the turret is mounted in the back, and that means that very often when you come around a corner, somebody just shoots you here, and then, well, you're dead in the water and you can't fire back. So this is a massive, massive drawback. Then let's come to the turret, and you can see that there is also some spaced armor, and they also help against heat and hash rounds in particular, but APHE can also be absorbed to a certain degree. However, high penetrating AP rounds and also AP-FSDS have no problem. So we have spaced armor, but no era protection and also no composite armor. Then there's also this again spaced armor layer here, and also in the back of the hull. So this is not as weak as it seems. And then on the side there are also here the fuel tanks that can also absorb a shot here and there, or can troll a little bit with the pen mechanics. But there you can see directly where the turret ring sits, there is everything that troubles this tank. There are huge M racks in the back of the vehicle, and there are also two ready racks. One that rotates with the turret, which is the primary ready rack, if you will, with 8 rounds, and one being in the breach. So that's 9 rounds that you really cannot take out of the tank, and then also the few rounds here. And from those two ammo racks, this one is the one that you should take out, and then it is down to your personal flavor if you use this or not. So the tank can absorb quite some trolley shots from the front, but it is not a hull down monster. It doesn't have the survivability forever. High penetrating AP-FSDS can easily go through, and very often a shot to the middle of the hull here just goes through the entirety of the tank, ignites the fuel tank, takes out the engine, kills all the crew, and ignites the ammunition. So much for the survivability of the Merkava Mk.1 versus AP-FSDS 1. And that means, guess what everybody fires? AP-FSDS. So yes, when you are top tier and when there are a lot of people with 7.7 tanks still trying to make APHE work versus main battle tanks from the front, then you can absorb quite a lot of shots. And yeah, I think this is now the armor, the interior, the survivability. Now let's talk about the remaining two big aspects, which are mobility and firepower. When it comes to the mobility, the Merkava Mk.1 is in its overall characteristics very similar to the T55AM. Yes, it has in this comparison the strongest engine with nearly 1000 horsepower, but it is also the heaviest tank with 60 tons dead flat, and that gives it a horsepower to ton ratio of 16.1, which is kind of in the middle average pack. Yes, the MX-30 B2 Brenners and the Leopard A1A1 L44 are significantly better when it comes to the horsepower to ton ratio, but you don't really feel this when you, for example, go with them to a capture point, except if it really goes uphill, then it is feelable. Where this horsepower to ton ratio really kicks in terms of being a drawback is in terms of the maneuverability, because you don't have neutral steering, and then the turnaround can take quite a while, and especially on muddy terrain it is hopelessly sluggish. And this is also reflected here with the rather mediocre 8 km/h reverse gear. The top speed, on the other hand, might look very bad, and it is in fact here in this comparison the worst with 46 km/h, but on the other hand you can actually achieve this top speed, and even on medium terrain you can easily travel with 30-35 km/h, and therefore can keep up with tanks that have on paper a better horsepower to ton ratio. So in close quarters, very sluggish, very slow, not a very good reverse gear, but going from A to B, the tank actually doesn't really feel all that bad, and when you reach higher speeds it feels like the ground pressure seems not to be that bad. Now let's talk about the firepower of the Merkava Mk.1, and before we talk here about the 105mm Sharir main gun, let's talk about the 4 machine guns. You have one heavy 50 caliber machine gun and 3 7.62mm machine guns, and you can use them to not just only threaten effectively aircraft and also very lightly armored vehicles that just might also present you the crew without armor. You also can then go for the tracks of an enemy tank and then track him without the tank being able to do anything about it in time. For example, if your gun is damaged, or if you want to support a another friend of yours while you reload. And this is very, very interesting. The next thing is obviously the main selling point and the business end of the Merkava Mk.1, the real business end. This is the 105mm Sharir gun, which is exactly the same as on the Shotcall Dalet. You have 62 rounds, which is way too much. A third is enough for an entire battle. Reload is very standard, 6.7 seconds, and you can see you are very, very standardized in this respect with all the other Western main battle tanks. The only exception is obviously here the Soviet T-55AM. Very good on the Merkava Mk.1 is the turret rotation speed of 40 degrees per second. This is doubling some of the other main battle tanks' turret rotation speed, and only the Mk.1 Brennus comes close with 3/4 of that turret rotation speed. This is very, very nice to have in conjunction with the stabilizer to get in the snapshots, to just simply get the gun on target first if you're in a close quarters engagement, if you're in a brawl. This is very, very helpful. The gun depression, on the other hand, is then kind of mediocre. There is nothing really wrong with 8 degrees of gun depression, and 20 degrees of gun depression is also very nice. Very noticeably is also the elevation speed outside of the stabilizer with 10 degrees per second, so that you really can level the gun to fire at a tank and then aim all the machine guns at a helicopter or an incoming plane, you name it. So this is also very nice. You can see overall the handling of the tank when it comes to the main firepower, or overall the firepower, is really, really nice. So now let's talk about the ammunition. At the bottom of the screen you can see a comparison, and also on the left you can see the stock HeatFS shell, which I want to begin with. It's the M152. It is very standard though, 400mm of penetration at all distances, and neutral normalization since it is a HeatFS round. 1173 meters per second. You should know by now how to lead this shell, since this is again very standard. This shell, although being very good in terms of penetration, deals very, very badly with aero protection, at least with the first shot, and it also doesn't really deal all that well with composite armor. And then on top of this, it is rather dwarfed by the mighty 120mm L44 Rheinmetall gun, and also by the T-55AM1's ATGM with 600mm of penetration. The second shell type is a tier 1 upgrade, and that is the M156 hash round. It has decent penetration, in particular if you count it as an HE round, but the hash effect is always nice. However, it is very unreliable. First of all, because it has a very low muzzle velocity, so very difficult to aim at long ranges if you're used to AP-FSDS or the stock HeatFS round, because we're only having 730 meters per second muzzle velocity. On top of this, it deals also very badly with aero protection, with spaced armor, and also with composite armor. However, in a lot of situations this shell can be also very helpful, so I always would keep like 5 to 6 of them of those shells within your ammunition selection. The third shell type is the M416 smoke shell, and it's kind of average, not really that interesting. Maybe use 1 or 2 of them, and this is also your second source of smoke, since you have 30 single smoke grenades that you can launch from the tank turret. And finally, as a tier 4 upgrade, we have the Mk.1 AP-FSDS round. It's the very same AP-FSDS that you get on the Shotcall Dalet. Very powerful at this battle rating of 8.7. It deals very well with any kind of armor, except for the best of composite armor. And while it is not the best AP-FSDS in this comparison, it is in fact the second worst, it is still good enough. Yes, it is dwarfed by the Rheinmetall L44. Yes, some other tanks might have better ammunition, like the M60A1 Rise P or the Mk.1 Brennus, but those are rather insignificant differences. Compare this with the very good gun handling, with the very great reload, and also the support of the machine guns, then you can see that this tank's firepower is a serious threat. And in fact, once you get the gun on target, there is not much that the enemy can do except hope that you just hit a part where then at extreme angles the shell might bounce. But other of this, the post-penetration damage effect is great. The muzzle velocity with 1455 meters per second is great. The normalization is positive, and also the penetration with 337 millimeters is still good enough. So that is the Merkava 1 in its rundown of the numbers in comparison to the most opponents that you can face on the battlefield, with its overall characteristics being, well, just compared. I think that I could help you therefore in the process in deciding if this tank is worth it, or if you want to go for some of the planes or some of the ships instead. But even if you pick this is just a simple taste of high tier combat. It is a stabilizer, it is a APFSDS, and it is high tier Call of Duty, and therefore, as you can see, we take each other's gun breach out. This is just the first taste of high tier combat and the first step towards the sheer decision: do you like this or do you not like this kind of combat? It is up to you. I think it is kind of sad that Gaijin, for all the trouble that you're going through, is not offering you this tank with the premium bonus that it has. So it doesn't really earn extra silver lines, it doesn't extra earn any sort of RP. It is kind of like a normal tech tree tank as a reward, like the IS-7, like the E100, if you have them, or if you know their status, that is. And so I think the Merkava is a really great collector's item. It is also not a bad tank, and it kind of fits very well into all the American lineups. I think it is just overall, despite its height and its overall shape, a better pick for me personally than the M60 Rise P. Now let's have a look at the survivability of the tank. So the first ATGM came in and set us on fire, and we have not lost a crew, therefore, so far. The second ATGM takes out our powertrain, but we have not lost crew up until this point. Yeah, that's the third ATGM that hits us, this time the turret, and it kills the commander and injures some of the remaining crew. The repair will take quite a while, and there you can see we can pop all the time the smoke. We have overall 30 charges, 30 single launches, and this is even more than the Shotcal Dalet has in terms of single launches. And this is, as you can see, very, very helpful. And when you're sitting in a capture zone, you can refill them one by one, as well as the ammunition. Yes, I use mostly here the APFSDS, and as a backup shell, then the hash round. The heat and the smoke shells are not really needed, except for very, very specialized situations. But in general, it is APFSDS and a few hash rounds. And if you then use like a third of the overall ammunition capacity, you might also survive a crew compartment penetration. Obviously, the tank is not magic. There was a little bit of hype about the Merkava's survivability, especially then in the War Thunder or Gaijin Dev blog about the tank, which was heavily misleading in my opinion, since every single shot that penetrates the crew compartment has a very high chance of either detonating the ammunition, killing all the crew, or just simply one-shotting you when it is APHE. So I think this extreme survivability that was advertised, yes, technically it is right, especially from the front. If somebody hits the hull with a hash round, or in particular an ATGM or a heat round, then the heat beam gets absorbed in all the compartments by the engine, by the transmission, and by the two armor plates before it can really enter the crew compartment. That includes also the stock heat FS from the Rheinmetall L44. So there you can see it works even with the strongest of heat shells, as far as I am aware, at this battle rating. And therefore, you know, it's a mixed bag. You can be surprised in a positive way if you don't expect anything from the tank, but if you think that now you are invincible and you eat all the damage and you are like a mouse versus SPA, that's not really the case. So again, your side is weak and your front is also not invulnerable. And also your mobility is not outstandingly good, but it is still good enough. And then there is the very nice gun handling in conjunction of the really average reload, but good average reload, the decent ammo loadout that you have, and on top of this also the 40 degrees of turret rotation speed, which is really nice and gives you really the greatest taste of high tier combat capabilities at over one battle rating step lower. And that in its essence is, in a nutshell, the Merkava Mk.1. A nice tank, but not really outstanding. I think this is down to just how War Thunder plays out. It is very good with its gun handling, and that's really the only outstanding feature that I can give it. Aside from here and there is the survivability, but that is very, very much depending on the situation. You should not count on it, and this might be one of the mistakes that people will make. Therefore, I made the tank review. Therefore, I could hopefully help you here with your decision making. And that's it with this battle. So let's hop into the hangar and let's have a look at the results. And there we go, first place in team with 50,000 Silver Lions earned and 6,658 vehicle research points, including the Survivor Award and some nice trophy boxes. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.